Hi everyone, and a very good afternoon, and welcome to another session brought to you by Villan Asia. I'm Norman. Before we start, I would like to remind everyone to like our Facebook and LinkedIn. You can follow us for more updates. Just search for Villan Asia or click on the link provided in the Q&A section, which is located on the right-hand side of the screen. If the Q&A section is not open, you can click on the small little blimp with the question mark on top right corner of the screen, and you can open that section and you'll find the link in there. For any product inquiries, you can also WhatsApp us at +6012 2660189. The number is displayed on the screen. So for today's session, we are going to be talking about image and branding in the new norm. We have Renuka Singham with us to share about this topic. Renuka Singham is the founder of Image Revamp Consultancy and has been recently chosen as one of the 100 most influential LinkedIn icons in Malaysia. Throughout her 10-year career, Renuka's work has helped develop over 8,000 professionals throughout her proven data-driven branding programs. Renuka's accolades include certifications for being an NLP practitioner, a men's styling consultant, and a HRDF trainer. She also holds a business honors in optometry. So today's session will be presented to you. Thank you so much for being here, Renuka, and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be handing it over to you then.
All right. Thank you so much, Norman. Hi, everyone. Thanks for spending your Tuesday afternoon with me to go through what we now foresee as the new normal. So I thought it'd be really interesting for me to just share with you how is it going to be like right now when it comes to image and branding, and what are some things that perhaps you need to be a bit more mindful of as we, manage through this current situation. Now, Norman has been really kind to introduce me and share with you what I do. So I primarily focus on employee branding and image, and I have been in this field for close to 3 years. But throughout my life, I've always been a trainer, and I've actually covered many companies throughout the years, which particularly in the healthcare industry as well. Yeah. So enough about the topic and also what I do. I think it's important for me at this moment to also set the tone right so that everyone knows at least what we'll be sharing today. Yeah, so it's going to be a half an hour to 45 minutes talk, followed by perhaps 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A. But let's just see how it goes. Again, if you have any questions, please do put it at the Q&A section. So these three main things that I want to share with you guys today is number one, the big why. Why is it so important that we really focus on image and branding at this current time? It has always been really important, but even so right now, because we are really managing through situations and scenarios that we might not be that familiar with, right? And secondly, I'm going to also touch a little bit on effective implementation steps. And lastly, I'm going to leave you with quick tips on 3 do's and 3 don'ts when it comes to managing your business or your team virtually. Yeah. So since I am here to give you guys, a talk about this, I also thought I wanted to bring to light some rather interesting stereotypes that I've always heard when it comes to image. Now, I just want to share here that image is really not just grooming. Grooming meaning makeup, looking good, looking pretty, right? In fact, grooming is just a very minor subset to image. Image is actually made out of 3 components, which is appearance, behavior, as well as communication. Now, for today, we're going to talk a little bit more about your appearance, how you should be in video calls. But having said that, I also want to just highlight here that looking the part is also not for vanity reasons. So I'm not here for 1 hour or half an hour to share with you about, what kind of makeup you should use or how you should style your hair or whatnot. I'm just sharing with you the implications of image when it comes to business continuity as well as your personal brand. Yeah. So I like to actually dive into the big why, and I'm gonna just divide this into two sections, which is for those of you that are under employment, meaning to say you work for a company, you're managing a team, or maybe you're an associate there. And secondly, for business owners, meaning to say your normal day-to-day is you're meeting your clients, you're a client-facing position, for example. So I'm going to share a little bit about the big whys when it comes to this too. Some facts might be overlapping, but suggest that you just pick and choose whichever category that you resonate or relate most to, right? So one of the big whys, which was very interesting that I actually found out, was that this research that I found online that was done in 2015 that shows employees who were dressed too casually had a decrease in creativity and strategic thinking. This was actually done by the Social Psychological and Personality Science Department. And what it really says is so interesting because they noted a category of people who wore formal to meet their clients and to do their daily jobs versus a category of employees who were dressed casual, borderline pajamas looking, and they realized the level of creativity and strategic thinkings were a very huge vary between the both of it. Now, of course, to this note, right, I just want to say in the beginning of MCO, of course, majority of us were working from home, and many of us were doing our business or work virtually, right, on video calls. But it was just really the start, and of course, there were much leniency given during that time because, it's really the beginning. Nobody knows what to expect. But now, 2.5 months to 3 months down the road, I believe we need to actually go back to normal and create a sense of normalcy for our associates and also ourselves when it comes to how we conduct our business or how we go about our work on a day-to-day basis. So what I'm trying to say here is that I don't think that you should actually still be wearing your house clothes or pajamas when you're doing your video calls when it relates to work, because it's not just me saying it, but research shows that as well. And interestingly, after this research, there was a follow through that stated, right, for associates that were wearing pajamas or house clothes, they realized that the level of engagements of these associates were much lower, level of productivity in the workplace was also much lower, and the sense of morale was really not there. So this, to me, right, is really a big why as to why companies need to really focus in terms of enforcing a certain type of image and brand towards their employees, especially during right now. Yeah. The second thing I think is really important is actually to do with business continuity, whereby we also want our employees, our team members to have a sense of work-life balance in the new normal. I think the most common thing that I often hear people tell me during this time, during MCO a few months back and now, is that work never seems to end, right? There is no such work-life balance that they've experienced versus working physically. They feel that work seems to drag even more than the usual working hours of 6:30 or 7. And that sometimes, right, believe it or not, has to do with our mind conditioning as well, which is why I oftentimes advocate to people who are working from home at this moment right now, for you to practice the normalcy of, getting up, getting dressed as if you're going out to the office, when in actual fact you're actually staying at home. Because when you get up, dress up, groom yourself, wear your professional clothing and whatnot, you're conditioning your mind to know that right now this is work. So when 6:30 to 7 comes and you relax and you change back to your house clothes, your mind now understands that, hey, now it's the downtime. I don't need to actually worry about work so much. It is right now my relaxing time. So in some ways, enforcing certain dress codes and also understanding this, right, will ensure that your associates are also not over exhausted or feel that at this moment of time they have no work-life balance. Yeah. So when it comes to business owners, on the other hand, I think the main reason why it's so important when it comes to image and branding at this moment is really about your first impressions. Back then, first impression of what people, your clients have of you is the first time you meet them physically. But right now, I can say safely that majority of you, the first time you meet your clients is definitely virtually. So your virtual meetings right now are really your first impressions. And guess what? It takes you only 7 seconds to build build an impression, and you don't get a second chance to build a first good impression, right? So really have to take into consideration of that. And on a continuation to this, right, is really when it comes to your personal brand. Now, when it comes to personal brand, which is the implementation part, I just want to also highlight this very important point here, which I too believe, which is perception is king. You know, whatever people see of you virtually, or even in your social media platforms for that matter, is truly the first impression they have, regardless of what kind of substance you have to offer. So on that note, right, even though people feel that, oh, image or maintaining your personal brand is a very superficial thing, what's most important is my substance. You really need to think through the aspect that, you know, many of the times, especially right now, people tend to see you virtually on social media platforms, or maybe speak to you on video calls without seeing you or without experiencing you physically. So you have to think about how you want to be more mindful when it comes to developing your personal brand. And on that, I have three very quick tips on this, which is the first step: understanding your target audience. When it comes to your personal brand, it's really important to understand who exactly are you creating this brand for. Whether you are under employment or whether you are a business owner, it is important to understand why is it so important to have this certain brand, and to who is it targeted to. Because you have to remember, people like people who are like themselves, right? People like people who are like themselves. So a lot of times, understanding your audience, understanding your target, helps you to create a certain type of brand that would appeal to the audience that really am looking at you and receiving you. Now, once that's done, the second step would be dressing how you would like to be addressed. Yeah. So on that note, of course, it talks about your appearance. Before you decide on like what kind of attire or how you want to dress, it's important to also identify the impressions you want to create. You know, some examples of it would probably be like, you want to look more professional, you want to look more approachable. Regardless of whatever it is, it has to translate through how you look. Because remember, it only takes 7 seconds for someone to build an impression towards you. So 7 seconds, right? You're lucky if you can say something to prove otherwise. If not, it really is to do with how you are packaging yourself and how you brand yourself that certain way. Yeah. And of course, the third thing, most importantly, is that even though at this point we're talking about appearance, do not forget your behavior and communication, because once someone has a certain level of impression towards you, the best way to continue or to prolong that positive impression is really through your behavior and also your communication skills, through virtual calls or through emails and whatnot. So that's really one of the most important things that I see when it comes to creating your personal brand. Yeah. So as I mentioned, social media is also really important at this moment when it comes to your image and brand, because get this, I also recently found this really interesting study stating that 70% of clients research online before making a decision. 70%. That's really a very high number, yeah, because you know, the thing is, before that, it could be word of mouth, which currently it still is. But because during the MCO and during this pandemic, a lot of us were staying at home, there were more eyeballs on social media platforms. And so for any kind of services or products, the easiest way really was to go online and find that person or find that company. So 70% out of 10 consumers, 7 of them search you online before engaging you. So which is why, right, it is so important to make sure that your brand and image physically when people see you, and virtually on the social media platforms, is in congruency. That means it really matches the same way, because the last thing you want is that for you to really sell yourself highly on social media, but yet when people see you physically, it really is a overrated situation. So make sure that really it is in congruency for that matter. Yeah. So that is really on personal brand. When it comes to implementation in terms of team management, I think this is something that many people don't really speak about when it comes to the image and brand conversation. Why is it so related to team management? Let me share with you why. First thing is, it's really important to set an expectation in terms of the dress code for your team members, because as I mentioned prior, in terms of the big whys, studies showing that, in terms of productivity level, strategic thinking, creativity level, it has a lot of times to do with how the employee or how the individual feels, the confidence level, the self-esteem of how they look, right? So it is really important to make sure that these expectations are actually measured. To share with your team, perhaps, right, it's okay, you don't have to wear a suit and tie in front of the in front of the video call, but at least, the very least, it has to be business casual, just to avoid situations where you have employees that dress a little bit too casually when they come in, right? And the second thing is really important to keep your calls short, keep your groups of people in the meeting small with intended agenda. Now, you might be thinking, what is this to do with image and brand? Well, that's employee branding, right? We also want to ensure in terms of our employees that there has to be a continuous form of engagement when it comes to how we run our business right now when it's virtually. So what I realized throughout the months is that if this is within your control, having smaller groups, which is maybe a group of 5 to 8, for example, shorter calls with intended agenda, meaning to say before the call is done, you would have already preempt the people that were going to be in the call, what exactly the context of the meeting would be like, and what is it they need to contribute. Because when they know that there is a need to contribute, the level of interaction and engagement to this particular call would be a lot higher. And that would really minimize the constant problems that we see now with employees, which is feeling the sense of disengagement, isolation when it comes to working from home, right? So keeping it short, keeping the group small with intended agenda. Of course, I understand there are certain situations that maybe this is not possible to be done, but if it is within your capacity to control it, make sure it is done this way. Yeah, and of course, the third thing, which is very related to the second point, moving video calls and meetings from town hall styles to discussion styles. And this is actually because, like I mentioned prior to this, engagement is so important right now when it comes to our employees, when it comes to our team members. Town hall style, meaning to say everybody, it's kind of like what we're having right now, right? Where everyone is muted, the videos are off, and I'm the only one speaking. Now, in this context, of course, it is understandable. It is a talk, it's a webinar. That's a bit of a difference. But if right now it is a meeting, and if you were to do this, what stops the employee or the team member from doing other works while this whole meeting is taking place? Nothing, right? So in order to increase the level of engagements and increase them paying attention to the entire meeting, it's really important to ensure that your meetings are now from a one announcement style to a discussion where everybody needs and has to contribute to it. Yeah. So for me, I feel that when it comes to uplifting your employees' morale, managing them in this way, it really helps to kind of minimize that whole disengagement and isolation factor that was most oftentimes spoke about in the early parts of our MCO. Now, with that, I think I would like to now share with you guys some very quick tips of do's and don'ts when it comes to doing your work or having video calls virtually, of course. So, of course, I'm going to be sharing some tips when it comes to image, but a little bit more than putting makeup or whatever. These are the 3 things that, based on my observations, are still not that practiced in the current state. And once you know about this, I hope that you would also implement this during your calls in the future. So let's go with that. First thing is your body language during a call. Now, this is really interesting. A lot of people tell me that because this is not a physical call meeting, it's a virtual meeting, there tends to be already a disengagement there, no doubt, because we're talking behind the screen. Yes, I agree with that. And it's not something we can control. But you can definitely increase the level of rapport with certain types of body language. And what am I speaking about? I'm actually talking about eye contact. Now, in many video calls, what I notice is that people tend to look at the screen rather than the camera. Now, a lot of people, when they're speaking, they're either looking at the screen, looking at the people that they're speaking to, or looking at themselves in the screen, and that really doesn't do anyone much favor. So in order to let the other person feel like you are really speaking to them, look at the camera instead of looking at the screen. So mind your body language in that sense, because in physical sense, we also say that body language, and especially eye contact, is the best way to really build a rapport with the other person. Yeah. Secondly is reduce distraction and create attention. So what do I mean by that? Distraction can come in many forms. It is not just sound, but also visual distractions. So many of the times I tell people, when you're in a video call, you need to make sure that the call, the person at the other side of the call has to have their full attention to what you're saying and not to what's going on behind. So distraction visually could be things like clutter, or maybe there's lots of, ornaments or things behind you that will get people to be like deviated in terms of what you're saying and not paying attention. So I always say that it's great to have a clean background, and also very importantly to ensure that your background and whatever that you're wearing has a higher contrast to ensure that you are more memorable and people remember you a bit better and hence pay attention to you more. Yeah, and so with that, I do see many people doing the virtual background kind of thing. I think that's fine, but you have to really be very mindful about what kind of virtual background you're using, and also the level of resolution of it, because I think some people, when there's a background happening, they kind of blend in and out of it, and that can be quite distracting as well. So think about that, reduce the visual distraction. Of course, audio distractions are a big no, but reduce the visual ones as well, and create attention to you by building up the contrast between what you're wearing and what your background is. Yeah, so that's number 2. And number 3 is continue interactions. Now, this is a very interesting study that I read online, where a group of German researchers actually found, right, that in terms of virtual video calls, a silence of just 1.2 seconds, 1.2 seconds is enough to let the other person at the other end feel a disassociation and feel that the person that they're speaking to is disinterested in what they're saying and is not focused. Just 1 second. So in that sense, when it comes to meetings that you're having, virtual meetings, try to engage and continue interactions. And what I would suggest, that if this is a meeting, there is no need for everyone to be on mute, because it is a discussion anyways, and everyone has to continue speaking so that there is fluidity when it comes to the conversation. So I would suggest that if you're holding a meeting, kindly get all of your members to unmute themselves so that they are able to just very spontaneously answer, rather than when it comes to them, they have to unmute and all that, and that's 1 second. Yeah, studies show that it just takes you 1 second to feel that the other person is disinterested at what you're saying. Yeah, so really have that in mind. And these 3 things are basically why I wanted to highlight this, is because up until now, I still see that this is a major issue. Many people still aren't practicing this, so just be very mindful of it. Yeah. Now, when it comes to the don'ts, the first important thing I want to say is lighting. A lot of people still make this common mistake of sitting with your window or your lighting behind you, and that kind of creates just a silhouette of your body, and I know we really don't want that kind of mystery in a call, right? So make sure at any time the light is facing your face. Now, even for me, the fact that I do a lot of webinars and calls, I don't have like the ring light thingy going on. What I do is really just use natural lighting. So I sit with my laptop facing the window so that the natural light kind of brightens me up, makes me look fresh, and at the same time, it doesn't create any kind of distraction. Yeah. And second thing is practicing. Do not practice a no video, no sound meeting. So when you're actually doing a meeting, make sure that all your subordinates or your team members or whatnot turn on their videos and of course unmute themselves, because guys, you have to now practice how you conduct your business, how you conduct your meetings as if it is how it was before the MCO and before the pandemic. So if you're in a meeting physically in a meeting room, can you like unmute yourself? Can you like turn off your face? You can't. So have that the same way as well, to just get your team members back to speed in terms of business continuity. Yeah. And the third thing, do not dress too casual, because I know I'm repeating myself quite a bit here, but I just really want to emphasize that even though I'm sure many of you have read this online, like, hey, you should dress a certain way when you're in a call. Being on call a lot myself, I still see this. I still see that people are wearing very casually. I can tell it's a house clothes, if not pajamas. And it's the excuse of being like, hey, I'm at home, I'm with my kids, so it's okay if I don't dress this way. Would you dress this way if you're going to the office physically? If not, then don't do it. Yeah. So dressing too casual is also a big no when it comes to video calls as well. Yeah. So in conclusion, I just want to leave you guys with these two very important points here. First is to create a normalcy in your organization for the sake of business continuity. And second is to relook into your personal brand and image with regards to the current state of business. Now, of course, I know that right now we are into the relaxed mode. Many of you are back to office, but I also do understand that majority of you are working on alternate working from home schedules, meaning to say there is still 50% of your time at home doing your day-to-day business and day-to-day work, right? So really ensuring that your image and brand is similar to how it is when you are going to work is so important, because again, we just don't want to have a disruption in terms of our business. We want to just make sure that it goes back to normal, even though we know that the normal that we're thinking of is no longer the normal that we're having right now. Yeah. So I hope you guys found this session, though it's short, informative, because I thought that instead of sharing with you tips and tricks of like what kind of attire looks good on you, I thought it's really important to shed some light in terms of the importance of it. And so, to not get everyone to think that maintaining your image and brand is just because you want to look good. Wanting to look good is just one small point of it, yeah, but the impact of looking good and presentable is really what we need to focus on. Yeah. So with that, thank you so much again, VLAN Asia, for having me to speak about this. And so if you guys have any questions, maybe not now, and if you think about it more, do reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can just search me on Renuka Singham. And yeah, I'll be happy to speak to you guys more after this. Yeah. So thank you so much. And Norman, I think I will pass it back to you.
Thanks so much, Renuka. Thank you so much for enlightening us on it. Yeah, it's very important to dress up nicely when you have a call, right? Now I'm not going to wear my boxers when I have meetings now.
Yeah. The interesting thing is a lot of people say that just wear nice on the top half and the bottom half just wear pajamas, but I think I speak more on like the conditioning of your mind kind of thing. So if you really want to get in the gear of it, I always suggest to people like wear the full on thing, like don't just go halfway here, just go all out, so that it really gets you to be geared up like, hey, yes, now it's work time. After that it's chill time and dinner.
True. Yeah, because every time you dress up for a different occasion just shows, I mean, you portray that occasion. Like if you're going to go jogging, you don't wear your pajamas and go out, right? Or your jeans.
Yes, exactly.
You're going to wear the sports apparel. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's true. We have a question here, Renuka.
Okay.
How to look professionally creative? Do you have any tips on that?
Professionally creative. Hello?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, that's a really good question, and I love to share my thoughts with you. So, in fact, right, some of my clients, my personal clients that I do coach on, they are from the creative industries, and however, they are also senior leaders in that particular industry. So, what I usually share with them is that when you say about professionally being creative, right, in terms of the cut, the fitting of what you're wearing, has to be of a professional cut. It means you have to still be very mindful of the fit and whatnot, but in terms of the fabric, the print, the material, you can go crazy. So in that sense, when people see you, they understand that there is a certain form and fit and polishness to you, but yet because of the prints or maybe the colors that you choose, it kind of accentuates the fact that you are more towards from the creative industry. So I guess having that kind of balance is important because what I realized for people from the creative line is that when you see them, you can tell, but then there is no sense of, polishness or flair when it comes to the dressing of it. And I think that's something that can really be improved. Yeah.
Is it encouraged to wear a hat while you conduct?
I think when it comes to a hat, right? Some people do that in a sense as a personal brand. I don't think it's wrong, but I guess in some ways you also need to understand that is it distracting though? Because the last thing you want, right, is for people to be so distracted by what you wear and what you are having on you that they are not really paying attention to exactly what you're saying. So understand that you want to create a certain brand for yourself, but have that in mind that you don't want people to be distracted, especially like I guess sometimes I tell women, example, when you're wearing earrings, don't wear something that's loud and clanky because the minute you move, everything just sounds, and people are distracted. Humans, right? We're easily distracted, to be honest.
True. Speaking of movement, there's a question here. How we tailor the right gestures to be used when we first meet someone to make the conversation more comfortable?
How do we, sorry, come again? I didn't quite hear the first part.
How do we tailor the right gestures to be used when we first met someone to make the conversation more comfortable?
I think it's very important for you to, by the way, thank you so much for the question. I think it's very important for you to also understand who exactly you're meeting. Is it a client? Is it someone that you're going for a negotiation meeting for? I think setting the context, the environment, and also the audience, the person that you're speaking to is really important. I think, right, to be very honest, given the sensitivity of, a lot of people are still very adamant about handshakes, which is very, very fine. And also, like prior to this, some people are sensitive to physical touch. I think the easiest way to establish rapport and conversations is really through your facial body language per se. So smile, eye contact. These are like the two key things that I always tell people prior to any kind of physical touch or any kind of context for that matter. So I think that's something that you can really do for now.
Another question, how to know what are the colors that are right for my complexion?
That's a very, very common question that I get. So there is something called a color analysis. Of course, right now, I can't do it. I don't think I can see that person. But usually what we do with color analysis is that we run through a series of very tedious swatches and matching to your skin tone for us to understand exactly what kind of hues and tones will look best on you. And I think it's very interesting that this person pointed out, because I also want to just educate everyone on that. Because when it comes to colors, right, it's so important, especially the upper attire that you're wearing, the one that is closest to your face. It has to be the color that really suits you best, because if you're wearing a color that really either drains you off or is too outstanding for your skin tone, it really kind of fades off the entire energy that you have. So that's a good question about skin tone. I think it's very important. Having said that, for the person who's asking this question, if you're interested to know what color suits you best, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help you with that.
Is there any tips? Another question is, any tips and tricks while conducting webinars?
Oh, okay. So when it comes to webinars, right, that's really good, because the thing is, I do image classes, right? So image and branding. This is of course just a half an hour webinar that we're doing with VLAN, but when it comes to like a 2-hour session, right? Imagine sitting, you as a participant sitting there for 2 hours listening for a class. If there is not anything for the participant to do, guess what they will be doing? They'll be muting themselves off and turning off the video, and they'll be doing something else, right? So I think when it comes to webinars, right, you guys have to be very, very mindful of the level of interactions that you constantly have with these participants. So I would always advise, if you're doing a class where it's maybe more than 2 hours and it's a workshop, not a talk, then in terms of like the activities that you have to be a bit more continuous about it. Use apps or platforms such as like Kahoot, or any like Zoom breakout rooms, whatever it is, to really enforce that everybody in the session has to really have some form of interaction, or speak out, in order for people to still have that focus and interest to continue on, you know what I mean? But having said that, if it is just a 1 hour talk, to be very honest, and if it is just it's more of like a brief webinar, just very short one, and if your number of participants is huge, then to be very honest with you, it's not something that can really be controlled, which is why I always say that if you're doing a talk which is more than 2 hours, keep your classes small so that you can really manage everybody in there.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, there's another question here. Is the person that is asking finds online meetings are like very two-dimensional and lack of engagement of face-to-face meetings. How do I pick up for that when conducting online meetings?
Oh yeah, I mean, like as I was sharing just now, when it comes to like team management, right? I do agree. In the fact that I also am in a lot of meetings sometimes, right? That disengagement, or the fact that if you're doing something else nobody can tell, is one of the reasons what I do with my team is that before we do a meeting, I've already like emailed them and shared with them, hey, this is the topic that we're going to be talking about later, the meeting, and everybody needs to contribute ideas. So I turn the meeting right now from me asking about me talking about things to everybody discussing about the issue itself. So when there's discussion, when you have to talk, you have no choice but to pay attention and to interact. So that at least is able to improve the level of engagements. Of course, nothing beats physical meetings. Of course, I understand that, but at this point, we will just have to make do with the circumstances we're in and to just improve it however we see fitting.
Is it important to have gestures while you speak?
I don't think so, but I personally think, and this is again my personal opinion based on how I've been doing my team meetings right now, I actually do not allow them to mute themselves. So everyone has to be unmuted. And if you tell me that, hey, I need to mute myself because there's noise, then go into somewhere where there's not much noise, right? I need you to be unmuted because I need you to have constant flow of speaking and interacting, just like how you are in a physical meeting. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the things that many teams right now that I speak to, like the companies I train, and so far it's been going great because it's not a forced kind of thing, but rather just to get everyone back to the normal scenarios of like being in a meeting.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, it's not easy to run online meetings nowadays because we're so used to the physical one that sometimes we find it a little bit of a challenge, right? But I think once we continue doing this more often, it becomes easier. Right?
Yeah.
We are just people. We are just humans, and humans are creatures of habits. So we're very so we're just used to the physical movements of body language and looking at other participants as well. I get that as well when we conduct webinars. A lot of speakers ask me the same question: can we see the participants? They prefer that, right?
I think that's one of the things. What for the past few months when I've been doing my webinars, I realized the success rate is higher when the participants have a chance to speak as well. Because I think throughout these 2.5 months, we have been so saturated with like either webinars or virtual meetings, all these things where we're just sitting there looking and listening, right? So I think for people who are conducting workshops and talk, another additional thing is maybe you want to create your modules in the sense where you allow the participants to provide their inputs about the subject matter. Perhaps that can also increase their level of engagement.
That's a good tip. Any last words, Renuka, before we close the session?
I think really just wanted to let everyone know that, you know, when it comes to your image and brand, whether you're, you know, working in a company with your team or whether you're a business owner, I think high time that we really start paying attention to it. And perhaps I didn't also get a chance to speak a little bit more when it comes to your social media presence. But again, because everybody right now has more eyeballs on social media, right? And it's really easy to Google you out, right? So be very mindful of that, because unlike even virtual calls or physical meetings, how you are on your online, your social media, you don't have a chance to verbalize things, you know. So it's really about how you look and how you present yourself on that platform. So be very mindful of that. Take some time to think through it, what kind of impressions you want to create, and work from there onwards. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Renuka, for your time. So for
Also.
all those who are interested in finding out more on brand and image, you can actually contact Renuka and follow her on LinkedIn. Just look her up on LinkedIn. The time being, if you have any other questions or inquiries, you can actually drop us a WhatsApp message with the number that is displayed on the screen. We would appreciate it if you can actually scan the QR code and give us your feedback on this webinar. And also follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for more updates on webinars. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Renuka, for presenting it to us.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a good day ahead.
Stay safe. See you all soon.
All right. Bye.